John seemed to have everything going for him. A bright future in engineering, athletic success, and an easygoing charm that drew people in. But when he crossed paths with Sherri Rasmussen, a brilliant and driven nurse who had rapidly climbed the ranks of her profession, something shifted. Their connection was instant, their love undeniable. They seemed destined for a life of happiness, quickly planning a future together, much to the joy of Sherri's proud family. Yet beneath the surface of their perfect romance, something dark was stirring. Stephanie Lazarus, a former casual fling from John's college days, was not ready to let go. Her feelings for him had always run deeper than John realized, and with Sherri now in the picture, those emotions festered into something far more dangerous. As John and Sherri prepared for their wedding, Stephanie's behavior grew more erratic. Uninvited visits, unsettling encounters, and veiled threats that sent chills through Sherri's spine. Despite Sherri's growing fear and her pleas for help, John brushed off the signs, confident that the past was behind him. But the tension was mounting, and no one could have predicted how far jealousy would go to tear apart their seemingly perfect life. John Ruetten grew up in San Diego and went on to study mechanical engineering at the University of California, Los Angeles, from 1978 to 1982. While at UCLA, John was known as an athletic and driven young man. It was during his time at the university that he met Stephanie Lazarus, a fellow student who was also passionate about sports. The two lived in the same dormitory, Dykstra Hall, and shared a casual, sporadic romantic relationship. Despite Lazarus's deeper feelings for him, John never considered their relationship serious. He viewed it as little more than necking and fooling around. After graduating, John accepted a position with Micropolis, a hard drive manufacturer, marking the beginning of his engineering career. Meanwhile, Stephanie joined the Los Angeles Police Department, pursuing a career in law enforcement. Though the two had sporadic romantic encounters, including an intimate encounter after John's graduation, John continued to date other women, never fully reciprocating Stephanie's feelings. After John had distanced himself from Stephanie, he met a critical care nurse, Sherri Rasmussen. Sherri Rasmussen was born in 1957 and quickly demonstrated her exceptional intellect and drive. A prodigy of sorts, Sherri entered college at just 16 years old, pursuing a degree in nursing at Loma Linda University. Her early academic success mirrored the excellence she would later achieve in her professional life. By her late 20s, she had ascended to the role of Director of Nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, a significant achievement in such a competitive field. Sherri was known not only for her intelligence, but also for her dedication to her career. She taught classes for nurses and gave presentations, positioning herself as a leader in critical care nursing. Their meeting sparked an instant connection, leading to a relationship that quickly became serious. Sherri, with her accomplished career and kind demeanor, seemed to be the perfect match for John. They shared common values, a mutual respect, and a desire to build a life together. John was captivated by Sherri's intelligence and caring nature, while Sherri admired John's ambition and work ethic. Their relationship blossomed, and within a year, John proposed. They became engaged, planning their future together with excitement. However, not everyone was pleased with their engagement. Stephanie Lazarus, who had remained in John's life in the background, became increasingly despondent when she learned that John was serious about Sherri. In letters and journal entries, Stephanie expressed her deep emotional turmoil over John's decision to marry Sherri, which only served to heighten Sherri's unease about her presence. As John and Sherri prepared for marriage, Stephanie's behavior grew more intrusive. She began showing up unannounced at John and Sherri's shared apartment, even bringing her skis to be waxed by John. Sherri found these visits unsettling, particularly when Stephanie arrived in flattering workout clothes, or, on one occasion, armed and in uniform. Sherri confided in John, expressing her discomfort and growing concern over Stephanie's intentions. Despite Sherri's pleas, John dismissed her worries, insisting that his relationship with Stephanie was in the past and advising Sherri to ignore her. Sherri's parents, particularly her father Nels, shared her unease about Stephanie. Nels was acutely aware of Sherri's increasing anxiety, especially as Sherri confided in him that she believed Stephanie was stalking her. In one chilling encounter, Stephanie visited Sherri at her workplace and told her, "If I can't have John, no one else will." These ominous words only deepened Sherri's fears, but despite her attempts to get John to intervene, he remained largely indifferent to Stephanie's actions. Despite the looming presence of Stephanie Lazarus, John and Sherri were married in November 1985. Sherri's parents, although supportive of their daughter's decision, remained wary of John's ability to protect her from the ongoing threat posed by Stephanie. They felt that John's failure to confront Stephanie directly was a significant oversight, one that left Sherri vulnerable. By early February 1986, Sherri again voiced her fears to her father, telling him that she believed Stephanie was following her, even disguising herself as a man to stalk her more effectively. Her family urged her to take action, but it was already too late. The tension surrounding the love triangle between Sherri, John, and Stephanie would ultimately end in tragedy, but for a brief time, John and Sherri seemed to be building a promising life together. On the morning of February 24th, 1986, John left for his job at a local engineering firm. Sherri, who normally left before him, decided to sleep in that day, feeling apprehensive about an upcoming work conference. She told John she might call in sick, and he headed to work around 8 a.m. Without hearing from her for a while, John wasn't immediately alarmed. Sherri could have been busy at work or taken the day off. As the day went on, and his calls to Sherri went unanswered, John began to worry. He eventually contacted her workplace, only to find out she hadn't arrived at all. After finishing his workday and running some errands, including picking up dry cleaning, John returned home to a troubling sight. The garage door was open, something neither of them ever did. Even more disturbing, Sherri's BMW was missing. Initially, he thought she might have left in a hurry, but his concern deepened when he noticed shattered glass on the ground. Entering their condominium, John was met with a horrifying scene. Sherri, only 29 years old, lay motionless on the floor, still dressed in her bathrobe, her face showing clear signs of trauma. Desperately, John touched her, hoping she was still alive, but her skin was cold. In that heartbreaking moment, he realized Sherri was gone. After discovering Sherri's lifeless body, John Ruetten dialed 911, desperate for help. When the police arrived, they initially suspected a robbery gone wrong. The crime scene showed signs of a struggle, but there were no clear indicators of forced entry. Although the living room appeared disordered, with items like a broken vase and toppled stereo speakers, the typical signs of a burglary were absent. A VCR and CD player were oddly placed on the staircase, as if they had been set aside for theft but never taken. Drops of blood were visible on the CD player. The only significant item missing, apart from Sherri's car, was the couple's marriage license. Upstairs, officers found the sliding glass door shattered, matching the glass fragments John had seen in the garage. A quilted blanket draped over a chair caught their attention. Upon closer inspection, It had a bullet hole. Further investigation revealed that Sherri had been shot 3 times in the chest. One shot had likely been fired from a distance, while the other 2 were at point-blank range, with the gun pressed directly against her body and the blanket used to muffle the sound. 2.38 caliber bullets were recovered from her body, and it was clear the killer intended to ensure her death. Additionally, Sherri had a vase-inflicted injury on her face and a bite mark on her left forearm, which the police swabbed for evidence. Though investigators initially considered John a suspect, his colleagues confirmed he was at work at the time of the murder, ruling him out. As the investigation continued, police learned more about John and Sherri's personal history. When John met Sherri, he had been casually involved with another woman, Stephanie Lazarus, a classmate from UCLA who had taken their relationship far more seriously than John. While John viewed their relationship as casual, Stephanie was deeply attached, and her feelings only intensified when John began dating Sherri. Despite John's growing relationship with Sherri, Stephanie struggled to let go. She would often show up at John and Sherri's home uninvited, asking for his help with trivial matters. On one occasion, Stephanie appeared in workout clothes, asking John to wax her skis, which made Sherri uncomfortable. Despite Sherri's concerns, John assured her that his relationship with Stephanie was over. Eventually, John proposed to Sherri, and they became engaged. However, Stephanie's reaction to the engagement was extreme. She urgently called John, asking him to come to her condo to talk. During their conversation, she expressed her feelings, pleading with him to leave Sherri and be with her instead. In a misguided attempt to bring closure, John slept with Stephanie one last time. He later confessed to Sherri, who chose to forgive him, and they proceeded with their wedding plans. Even after John and Sherri married, Stephanie continued to insert herself into their lives. She stalked Sherri, showing up at her workplace in full police uniform, and even making threatening remarks like, "If I can't have John, no one will." Sherri shared her concerns with her family and friends, feeling increasingly frightened by Stephanie's behavior. Her fear escalated in the days before her death, as she reported being followed by someone she suspected was Stephanie, possibly disguised as a man. Despite Sherri's father reporting these incidents to the police, his concerns were dismissed. Shortly after Sherri's murder, another woman in a nearby neighborhood reported a burglary in her condo. She described 2 men who had broken in, one of whom threatened her with a gun. Police briefly considered a link between this incident and Sherri's murder, releasing sketches of 2 Latino men. However, these suspects were never found, and 10 days later, Sherri's BMW was discovered miles away, untouched, providing no new evidence. While police continued to focus on the theory of a botched robbery, Sherri's family remained adamant that Stephanie Lazarus was responsible for the murder. They believed her jealousy and stalking behavior indicated a much more personal motive. However, their pleas were ignored, and Stephanie was never considered a suspect at the time. On March 9th, 1986, Stephanie reported her LAPD-issued .38 caliber revolver stolen, just weeks after Sherri's murder. Investigators failed to connect the missing gun to the case. For years, Sherri's murder remained unsolved, and the case went cold. Stephanie advanced in her career with the LAPD, rising to the rank of detective and gaining recognition for her work in the prestigious art theft unit. She even started a family, adopting a daughter with her LAPD detective husband. The breakthrough in Sherri's case came when LAPD criminalist Jennifer Butterworth re-examined the forensic evidence, discovering that the saliva from the bite mark on Sherri's arm belonged to a female. This led detectives Jim Nuttall and Pete Barba to reopen the case in 2009. They found that the robbery theory did not hold up. Valuable items had been left behind, and the crime occurred in broad daylight in a secure, gated community. Suspicion soon turned to Stephanie Lazarus, whose name had been mentioned during the original investigation, but never pursued. Detectives launched a covert investigation, mindful that Stephanie, still an active LAPD officer, worked just across the hallway from them. They needed to collect her DNA to compare it to the sample from the bite mark. After careful surveillance, they managed to obtain Stephanie's DNA from a discarded cup. The results were conclusive. The DNA from the bite mark matched Stephanie's. On June 5, 2009, more than 2 decades after Sherri's murder, Stephanie Lazarus was arrested. During her interrogation, Stephanie initially feigned ignorance about the case, but when confronted with the DNA evidence, she refused to cooperate without a lawyer. She was taken into custody immediately afterward. Stephanie's trial began in February 2012, where prosecutors portrayed her as a jealous and obsessive woman who used her police training to stage the crime scene as a burglary. John testified at the trial, expressing deep regret over his involvement with Stephanie while he was engaged to Sherri. In the end, Stephanie Lazarus was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the California Institution for Women, with the possibility of parole in 2034. The pivotal piece of evidence that secured Stephanie's conviction was the DNA from the bite mark, finally giving Sherri's family the justice they had fought for decades to achieve.